Good morning. This webinar series is supported by a grant from the U.S. Forest Service to the South Carolina Forestry Commission Urban and Community Forestry Program. I'm Frances Waite, and I'm the Urban and Community Forestry Coordinator. The program's mission is to help municipalities and counties build capacity in their own urban and community forestry programs. We're partnering with Plan Green today to provide today's webinar. And I want to welcome you to our Planning Commissioner webinar series to give commissioners and advisory board members like you the tools to help you when having discussions regarding trees and urban forests. Today, we're going to be looking at tools available to you as urban and community forestry decision makers. And now Chris is going to tell you a little bit about today's topic.
Perfect. Thank you, Frances. I'm Chris Lepetiuk. I'm planner and arborist at Plan Green. Just want to again say thank you that you have all logged on today. And I also want to make it clear that if this is your first training session with us, please do not worry. This can be a standalone training, though of course we would love to see you in all of our trainings. Today we're gonna go over some of the tools that are available to board and commission members that can really help you in your decision making as it regards urban forestry and green space in your community. Before we do that, though, what we want to do is be sure that we go over some overall functionality of the webinar platform and do some housekeeping to be sure that we can all engage effectively and in an organized way. So first, we are using polls in this session, and polls are a way for us to find out more about who you are and what are your training needs and what are your knowledge needs. Also, we can find out if you found our training helpful or if you wanted to see different aspects or different topics more highlighted or some aspects or topics less highlighted. So where you find the polls are in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You'll see it says ask a question, then it says polls, and it says people. So if you click on polls, when we let you know that a poll is up, please just click there and you can answer the poll question. We have polls at the beginning, at the end, and throughout the webinar, but do not worry, we will prompt you to be sure that you see that those are up and ready to be answered. The other feature of the webinar platform is the question and answer section. The question and answer section we're really using for content-related questions. You find that on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and it's the leftmost button in the right-hand corner. So it says ask a question. Click that, and a dialog box will pop up. You can type in your question. Also, something to note is that if you see a question that you'd like answered, click to the left of that question. There will be a small arrow, a small up arrow. If you click on that up arrow, we will see that you also want that question answered, and we will use, to the best of our ability, we will get to that question over a question that only one person has, for example. The last feature is the chat box. In the chat box, we would love if you would say hello to your fellow attendees. We would also really appreciate if you'd let us know if you're having problems hearing us, seeing us, connecting in any way. And you can also use that to say goodbye or, whatever you want to chat about in the chat box. The only thing that we ask is that you put all content-related questions in the question and answer section. Perfect. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Frances, who's going to do a quick thank you.
I want to say a quick thank you to the funders and participants of today's webinar, the USDA Forest Service, the South Carolina Forestry Commission, South Carolina local planners, arborists, foresters, urban forest volunteers, South Carolina Board and Commission members, and forestry advocates. Without your continuing interest and support, we wouldn't be able to provide this programming. And so thank you for participating today. So what is this training? This type of training was requested from our stakeholders. It is part of a 5-session online training program intended to train South Carolina Board and Commission members on how great communities are developed and maintained when the urban forest is part of a community's planning and decision making. And today we're going to be looking at tools available to you as urban and community forestry decision makers. And Chris is going to tell you a little bit about the credits we're offering today.
Perfect. So we wanted to be sure we could get as many people the credits that they need. We have gotten Scpeac credits, and a lot of people have said, what is that? Those credits are for South Carolina Board and Commission members. Those are their continuing education units that's required by the state. So if you're a Board and Commission member in the state of South Carolina and you need these CEUs, those are the credits you're looking for. You can get up to 5 credits by attending each of the 5 training sessions. And just to provide some context, this is the 3rd training session. Okay, we can also receive ISA credits for arborists, municipal foresters, etc. And you can also receive AICP credits, which are the American Planning Association's credits for planners. If you need any of these credits, please type in the chat box your name and your email address if you have not already let me know that you need these credits. That way I can be sure to send you an email with your certificate and you can present that to the agency that's requiring you to get these credits. Now, I just want to take a minute and review what we learned in session 2 and also provide those that weren't able to attend session 2 a way to view that session and to view the materials that we've produced from that session. Note that you are not able to receive credits for watching the recorded session, but if you would just like the knowledge, this is a great way to get it, is through the recording. So in session 2, we had 2 guest speakers, and those guest speakers spoke about the way in which they incorporated urban forestry and planning into their communities. We learned that it is critical to involve several municipal departments, such as urban forestry, parks and recreation, planning, public works, etc., to be sure you have a complete program that is covering all of the aspects of urban forestry. We also learned that it's critical to engage the community and engage developers at the beginning stages of any urban forestry planning exercise or any urban forestry project. Without engaging everyone at the beginning, you risk alienating people and you risk not being able to get their input and getting their concerns addressed. Now, in the chat box, what I've done is I've placed the link to the recording of session 2, and I've also placed a link to the resources. So the resources provided include those slides from our presenters, and also some of the publications that they have either worked on or really recommend as excellent training resources. Now, I just want to jump into what we're covering today. So we're very excited about today's session. Today's session is really going to be a deep dive into the resources that are available to you in your decision-making process. So we've broken this up into 3 sections just for organizational purposes. The first section is looking at specific resources that relate to urban tree canopy. These are broken into tree canopy location or information resources. For example, resources that help you figure out where your urban tree canopy is in your city, and resources that help you determine the benefit or value of specific urban trees in your community. Also, we want to talk about ordinance-related tools as they relate to urban forestry. We also are looking at several online tools that identify areas of urban forestry growth and community livability. So these tools can really show you on a broad scale where your community is doing well and where it can do better at providing support for urban forestry, or where it can provide just more livable conditions for community members. Finally, we want to show you the sources of facts and figures that we use to support the case for urban forestry. We have scoured the internet and we've scoured our own libraries to find these resources, and we've really presented this in a way that is easily digestible, and we want you to have this as you will now be making the case for urban forestry in your community. With that, we'll get going.
Okay, I am going to provide the caveat that due to schedule changes in our team, parts of this webinar are recorded. We are still here live in the chat box and we'll be here throughout the entire presentation, but we will come on camera live at the end of the tools section for the question and answers. Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and dive in, and what I'm going to ask is that everyone should have received the resource sheet you see on my screen. And if you can have this open during the entirety of the tools section, that would be really great. It'll help you keep track of where we are with the tools and what's coming next. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and have those ready. Just type them in the question and answer box about these tools. Yeah, if you could have them open split screen, or even if you print them out, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and include the link to the Dropbox download for this resource sheet so that you can go ahead and open it if you didn't get it for whatever reason. Now, what I'm going to do is just click on the first resource, which is the Urban Forest Assessments Resource Guide. And again, I have this open on my screen, so there is no need for you to open this on your screen. If you don't want to, just make sure you have the resources. This resource guide was created by American Forests, and it has 3 parts. You'll see these 3 parts here. The first is talking kind of a background about urban forest management. What are the highlights of urban forest management and what tools are used? The second part is how to choose an urban forest ecosystem assessment tool. And it's really a great thing to read through if you are a community that's thinking about doing an urban forest assessment, because first you need to figure out what your goals are and what your community looks to gain from completing this assessment. The third section I'm going to scroll down to now, and this section talks about the different urban forest assessment tools that are out there. And again, to go through this section, you have to have gone through the question section to know exactly what you're trying to achieve in your community's urban forest assessment. So it talks about the types of assessment tools, top down, bottom up, watershed stormwater management, individual tree calculators, etc., etc. These are not all going to be useful for most board and commission members, but it's good to know what is out there and what the different tools address. So again, if you have a question about a specific tool, you can scroll down to it and you can just get a short snippet on what that tool does, what it achieves, and how it could help your community. So this is a really great report. As you see, it is here at the link in the resource sheet. It is for free. It is always online, accessible, but go ahead and download it so you have it on your computer. The next tool we're going to move on to is Tree Canopy, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And Tree Canopy is a part of the iTree suite. You probably know about the iTree suite. They're a free set of tools that use online imagery to provide information about Tree Canopy. And iTree does exactly what the name suggests. It shows you where the tree canopy is in your community. What I'm going to do is, this is opening a project site, which was something else I was working on. So I'm going to say new project. And of course, if you were opening this, it would not open to a different project. It wouldn't open to something else. And there's 2 ways that you can define the project boundary, which is the area that you want to study. Maybe it's a neighborhood. Maybe it's a block. Maybe it's a parcel. So you define that. And if you have shape files, you can go ahead and upload them here. If you don't have shape files, then you can just draw a boundary. I'm going to draw a boundary, which is just going to be easier for me. And I'm zooming in. Don't think that this has any hidden meaning where I'm going. But let's just say that for whatever reason, the intersection of these roads is interesting to me. I'm going to go ahead and click Draw Boundary. For the sake of this exercise, I'm going to do it a little bit crudely, but if you were to do this, if you had an actual parcel or area of interest, you would do this much more carefully. So it's showing me it's red, it's showing me the boundary is closed, and I can go ahead on to the next step. The next step is to choose how I want to classify the land cover. It can be tree or non-tree, most basic. And it's just asking me what area is treed and what area is non-treed. And I didn't say this previously, so I apologize, but the way Tree Canopy works is it does random samples. And the more random samples you do, then the more random samples you classify into tree or non-tree or other land cover, you get a better idea of what is on site. So like I said, I'm going to do tree and non-tree. Click next. And it's going to ask me, where is my project site? I'll go ahead and tell it. The reason that it's asking us this is that it's providing estimates for air pollution benefits, stormwater benefits, etc. And as we know, those can vary across locations. So I'm saying South Carolina, that looked like a pretty rural location to me, US dollars, and in English measurements. Great. And as you see, again, my line is a little bit off. If you were to do this again, you would do this more clearly, more accurately, I should say. So here I am, it's showing me my area of interest, and I'm gonna go ahead and click the plus button down here, which it will ask me, what is this land that is found? Where is this plus sign? So I'm gonna tell it that's not a tree, so don't worry about it, and give me another one. Okay, this is a little bit tricky. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is not a tree. It looks like it's on the edge of this treed section, but it looks like it's actually in a lawn space. This I can see it's clearly a tree. I can click Save and Create New. That's clearly a tree. Save and Create New. Again, that's clearly a tree. Clearly a tree. That's clearly agricultural land. So I'm going to say non-tree. This next one is clearly a tree. And you can see how this goes on and on. Now, if you look up, say non-tree. Okay. If you look up at this bar graph, you will see the gray square, the gray rectangle, which means non-tree. Just want to make sure this is still screen sharing good. And then you see the green rectangle, which is tree. And you see these bars go up as I click more and more points. And you see that these little black lines on top of them. That's our error bars. The more points you do, the smaller those error bars will get. You want to do as many points as possible so that your error bars will shrink and you can be confident that the tree and non-tree that you're reporting is accurate. So basically with this tool, you continue classifying points. Just continue. One thing to look out for is the fact that shadow can be very tricky. So take a look at the area around the crosshairs and try to gain an understanding of what's happening there so that you can be as accurate as possible in your classification. Now, when I've done enough points, which I haven't, I will click Report. And what it's going to show me is, again, these bars, which show me my percent non-tree cover and percent tree cover, my area of interest and where my points are. And then it's also going to show me my tree benefit estimates for air pollution, hydrological. This is really critical for making the case for trees because, of course, you can tell the amount of carbon monoxide removed annually, amount of sulfur dioxide removed annually, the amount of avoided runoff. And this is just another tool to have in your back pocket for when you are saying the trees on this site are important. That is basically how that tool works. And I just want to mention, I know I'm going to go through these tools quickly. That's not to confuse everyone. It's to make sure we get through all the tools in the time we have allotted. If you have any questions, please just go ahead and drop them in the question and answers box, and we'll get to as many of them as possible. Okay, I'm going to navigate back over here to my resources and go to my next tool, which is iTree Design. So it's another tool in the iTree suite. But this one is a little bit different in that it allows you to make estimates of the benefits of single trees on a site, which is more useful for a smaller parcel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter an address, which I have entered in here before. So I just entered the address, and it's asking me, do I want to calculate the impact of trees on your heating and cooling utility bill? I say yes. What a useful thing to know. I can zoom in, click on this polygon to start outlining the building shape. Again, I'm doing this relatively crudely. And double click. It's asking me, when was the structure built? I knew it was built in the 70s, heated and air conditioned. I keep going. Now what I'm going to do is, if I know, for example, that this large tree, I don't know if you can see my crosshairs, to the north of the building is a white oak. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say white oak, Quercus alba, tree diameter, let's say 30 inches. I know it's in excellent condition. I know it's in full sun. And I'm going to model that tree here. Okay. So it's showing me that tree. You can put up to 25 trees on this site by just continuing to add trees, add trees, add trees, the way we did this. And we can go ahead and enter the estimates, estimate the benefits. So what is the number of years that I want to estimate the benefits for? I'm going to say 25 years, because that's long enough to where I can really see the maximum benefits for the tree. And you can see while this is calculating, these green to yellowish zones are more desirable versus less desirable for heating and cooling reduction. So it's gone ahead and calculated, and it's going to tell me the stormwater benefits. So 3,373 gallons of rainfall are intercepted. And it's also going to tell me how much electricity and reduced consumption of heating fuel I will achieve by saving this tree. It's also going to tell me the air quality, carbon dioxide uptake information. So when I have finished and I've taken a look at this, what I can do is hit print, and then I can print this out. I can provide it in some support for why saving this tree specifically on this site is important, or actually conversely, why saving a particular tree is not that important on a site. Maybe it's that the condition of the tree is not in good condition, it's already in decline, and it's not providing a lot of benefits. But it gives you tools to make the case. I hope that makes sense to everyone. And what I'm going to do now is go to the National Tree Benefit Calculator. So this is very similar, but it's just a little bit easier. You can do this a little bit faster. So for example, I'm going to enter an address. And again, this is just an address I have off the top of my head. I'm going to reload this because I see it's not letting me type normally. Okay, I'm not quite sure what's going on. So normally you would type in an address, and this has always worked. Of course, when I'm recording this, it's not working. But if for some reason it's not working, you can always use it this way. So I can click on the climate zone where I know my tree is in, and I can enter the species. So let's continue with this species, which I knew was a white oak. And let's say that I have a different one. It's 15-inch DBH, and let's say it's in a industrial or large commercial business. Okay, this is providing me with the same information about these trees, but just with less mapping, and it's a more of a crude estimate of the benefit of the tree that you don't have to map it on site. So if you have a list of the trees that are on site but you don't have a map, this might be a better tool to estimate the benefits. And you can do these one by one. When you're done with that one, you click calculate another tree. So that's how that works. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to start entering them in the question and answer box. We will come on and answer as many of them as possible. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next tool, which is the EPA's National Stormwater Calculator. And the National Stormwater Calculator is really geared towards understanding the amount of stormwater runoff from a site and reducing that. So it's a great modeling tool, and it allows you to simulate green infrastructure methods so that you can really see their impact on stormwater reduction. There are a lot of LID methods included, such as bioinfiltration, rain spout disconnection, et cetera, that you might question, why do we include this? But one of them is street planters. So that's why we included this. I'm going to go ahead and name the site. So I'm going to name it test site just for this exercise. You can navigate to the site just by clicking on the map. But let's say I already know the address of the site. So I'm going to type in my address, Waite Drive, and this is in Monk's Corner. Again, don't read anything into the places that I've chosen. So I'm going to ask it to search for the site. It found it. Now I can't really see what's going on this site, so I'm going to go ahead and click Aerial, which helps me to get a better understanding of what's happening here. I was attempting to do a second ago was zoom in, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And let's say I have the parcel boundaries in front of me. I don't for this site, but luckily it's a brand new construction, so the parcel boundaries are quite evident in just the way that the lawn has been laid in and the way that the features have been constructed. So let's say those are my parcel boundaries. My location is done. Now what it's going to do is it's going to try and retrieve soil data. And I can see from the map that most of this is a clay loam. So I go ahead and choose clay loam. And now I'm going to look at the soil drainage. And I might know I'm looking at this map and I see that, again, we're still in a clay loam and it's estimating the stormwater runoff from pervious is about 0.04 inches per hour. I don't have information that suggests otherwise, though if I did, I would enter it here. Since I don't, I will leave that there. I assume that this is correct. Now it's asking me what kind of a slope is on the site. I can see that it's the yellow, a relatively flat slope. If it was in the pink, it'd be moderately flat, etc., etc. Going on to precipitation and evaporation, the program automatically chooses a rain gauge that is close to the site. If you know that, for example, this rain gauge is more accurate for your site, again, my site is here, and this is my rain gauge, then I would go ahead and click this rain gauge. Since I don't have that information that this one is more accurate versus that one, I assume the one that's closest is going to be most accurate, and I'm going to leave that there. This next section asks about climate change. So this is not something that you have to play with in your modeling. You can scroll down, you can say there's no change, and that's it. Or if you have information to the contrary, you can say that it's hot and dry going to be, or warm and wet, etc. Next, you select the time period to which the climate change scenario applies. I'm going to say it's near term until 2049. I could also reach further out into the far term, 2045, but I want to keep it to near term. Okay, now this is the nuance with this tool. You might ask, I can see that there's a house here, but there wasn't a house previously. You can model pre-development and post-development, and when using it, I absolutely recommend doing that. So the first model I'm going to do is pre-development. I can assume because I look across the street and I see this was forested. I could pretty much assume that this site was forested prior to being developed. So again, I'm doing pre-development and I'm going to model the scenario of pre-development. I will do this again, not in this exercise, but if you would go all the way through this, you would go through and model the development. So if you knew how much of the land cover was impervious, lawn, etc., etc., you would then do that in the post-development scenario. That'll make more sense in a minute. Now, the LID controls. This is what I had discussed in the very beginning, which is the purpose of this tool. So you can change what percentage of the site stormwater you would like treated by which methods. So for example, rain gardens, green roofs, street planters, infiltration basins. I recommend doing this when you're working on the post-development scenario, because it's not going to make a lot of sense at this point. So I'm going to leave these alone, but if I was to do this for the post-development, I would maybe click street planters and try to do 15%, and then rain gardens 10%. And continue to do that. Okay, the design storm for sizing. This is something that your public works engineers know, and you might even know off the top of your head. What is a design storm? I didn't look it up for Monk's Corner, so I'm going to say it's 3.5 inches. But if you don't know the answer to this, reach out to Public Works and they will be able to tell you what's the design storm. Okay, and it's going to ask me about the project type. It's a new development. I can see that. It was not previously developed. And the site suitability, I'm going to say it's moderate. It's there's no slope on it, relatively. The soil drainage was relatively good, so I'm going to say it's a moderate site suitability. Then it's going to ask about the cost region. The cost region is going to be selected automatically. You can change it. For example, this is pulling Atlanta. I would assume that the area around Atlanta is a pretty good representation. I could click down here and say, no, it's more like Miami or Philadelphia, but we're going to say Atlanta. Now, we're going to go to the results section. And the first thing that you need to click are your options section, the years you want to analyze. I'm going to say 20 years. I want to get a pretty good estimate of what the stormwater runoff will be as a result of development. And then it's going to ask me about the event threshold. The event threshold is asking what size of a rainstorm event will trigger modeling of that rainstorm. So I want to model as many events as I can to get an accurate estimate of the runoff, infiltration, etc. So I'm going to say my event threshold is 0.1 and refresh results. So this tool does take a little bit of time in crunching the results. But not to worry, as long as it's still spinning, that means it's still going. If for whatever reason it does stop, just go ahead and refresh and you can enter your project information in again. So just to recap, this tool is very, very good if you want to model pre and post development stormwater calculations. And as we know, urban trees are a great way to handle stormwater. They intercept, infiltrate a lot of stormwater. So this is really why we included this tool. And we're just waiting 1 minute for the results to generate. I also did want to mention while we're waiting that the EPA has created a lot of help features to accompany this product because it is a little bit confusing. If you need help with it, as you can see up on the top right hand corner here, there are resources, so definitely make great use of those. If those aren't answering your question, or if you'd like to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to walk you through, try to help answer as many questions as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in my email address in the chat box so you have that. This has popped up, and what I see is that my site was my site was fully forested. So I see a lot of infiltration. I see a lot of, infiltration. I see a lot of evaporation and not a lot of runoff, which you would expect from a forested condition. To run the numbers, the average annual rainfall was 43 inches, runoff was 9 inches, and so this gives me a great understanding of what the site was doing. Now, the very cool part of this tool, as I keep mentioning, is that you can click Use as a Baseline Scenario, and then you can run this again and to get the current scenario so that you can model what happens after development. Again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through this, running it again, but you would go through the exact same steps, except instead of saying that it was 100% forested, you would say, for example, it was 80% impervious because the large building on a relatively small lot, and the driveway, the sidewalk, etc., and the percentage of lawn. Obviously, if you have these numbers in front of you, which you should if it's a development plan, then that is great. Use those percentages as calculated on the plan. Good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the next set of tools. And these are relating to ordinances. As we had the first, I'm going back to my resource sheet so I can download it. As we had the first tool, which was more of a background reading assignment for urban forest assessments, this is more of a background assignment for ordinances. So what this really does is a comprehensive chapter of PAS Report 555, published by the American Planning Association. And it shows you what are the principles of an effective urban forestry program. And through each of these principles, then it gets a little bit into the codes and ordinances. Why this is important is that you can see what the codes and ordinances addresses in the big picture of urban forestry, as opposed to just zooming in on road widths or these kinds of things that may not show you the big picture. So again, I definitely recommend downloading this and taking a look at it, reading through this. It's about 17 pages, lots of diagrams. So definitely go ahead and read through this. It is broken up into general principles, 5 of them, And then, like I said, it gets into the codes and ordinances that support those principles. Now, once you've read through that, we would recommend using one or both of these codes and ordinances tools. I'm going to start with the Center for Watershed Protection Codes and Ordinances tool. And I'm going to provide the caveat that preparing to use these tools can be a lot of work. It can be several hours to sort through codes and ordinances. So I do not want anyone to think that it's as simple as click, 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 and you're done. So this is the Center for Watershed Protection's website, and the COW, they call it, was grant funded, so this is free, available for download by anyone. To get started, what I recommend doing is scroll down to these green letters, green text, and click on the scoring spreadsheet first. So to open it, just click the green letters and then you click download. And then you go ahead and open it. Okay, my computer's, it's bouncing. Okay. I opened that, and the reason I'm going back here is that I want to have both of these documents open at the same time. Both the worksheet, which is a PDF format, and the Excel spreadsheet, which is the scoring, the way that you can score your community. So to start, I'm going to open this up full screen. If you are preparing to assess, I'll say, your city's codes and ordinances, what you're going to need to do first is you're going to need to pull codes and ordinances. And I apologize, I should have opened this first. I'm scrolling in the PDF, and this is information about the tool. Definitely read this. I'm looking for something specific. Okay, this. Table 1, relevant documents for completing the COW. So you're going to want to pull those codes and enter them up here in the codes reviewed section and any notes. That way you have this all organized. Then you're going to have questions that you're going to need to answer about the different codes and ordinances, and it's really helpful to stay organized with having the different agencies, contact names, phone numbers for people that you can ask questions to regarding these ordinances. Okay, now we're going to go back to the PDF, and again, this has been developed, I should say, in a very smart way. There's lots of information that talks about why these ordinances are important, as opposed to just saying, do you have these ordinances and that's it. So I definitely recommend reading through this PDF. I'm scrolling down to the worksheet because I want to show you how it works. So the first thing that it's looking at is residential streets and parking lots, specifically street width, showing you the principle. Why is it important to have minimum pavement while still supporting on-street parking, emergency maintenance, etc. Read through that information, then it'll ask you these questions. Is the minimum roadway width allowed for streets in neighborhoods with low volume roads, etc., between 18 and 22 feet? You would look at your codes and ordinances of your community. You would say yes, no, codes are silent. I recommend putting your answers in the spreadsheet form that they've given you. One nuance is that they have 4 different tabs. You are not going to enter information to each of these tabs. What you're going to do is determine what kind of community is yours. So is it highly urban, suburban, or rural? So choose that. I'm going to say we have a rural form. And I apologize that this is so small. I'm just trying to show you everything at once. Here we go. So you see the question that we just looked at, and you would go ahead and enter in yes, no, and then the points associated with it. So I believe it was 1 point for yes. I'm going to say yes. Okay. And then as you go through all of these questions, there are 4 of them. You answer all the questions, you will find at the end total possible points, total points achieved, and a final score. So it gives you an idea of what score your community is with regards to reducing impervious surfaces and increasing stormwater uptake. That's the point of this spreadsheet and the point of this tool. Now, I said that we were going to look at two very similar tools. not going to save this. The second tool, as I said, has a similar goal, but it's a little bit different, and that this tool is really designed for urban forestry, answering urban forestry questions in particular. So the first, it's one Excel spreadsheet to get started. There's no going between two of them. And the first page shows what is the tool, how is it funded, how do I use it, question scores, etc., etc. And so definitely read through that, but I'm going to go through it with you and show you again that this is, it really does look at urban forestry in particular. So the first section that you look at, and you're going to go through each, oops, I apologize. You're going to go through each of these sections. I apologize. Here we go, do it like this. So the first section looks at only tree care and protection. This can be on new and redevelopment properties. And so it's asking about, tree inventories, when are they required, what DBH of trees must be inventoried. It's very, very urban forestry specific, while at the same time having this reducing impervious surface, I guess it's to say, topic to answer a lot of questions about impervious surfaces. So I would say that it's probably a mixture of the Center for Watershed Protections tool and this tool. So it encompasses a much larger topic base while really dialing in on urban forestry in particular. So what you would do is you would go ahead and answer the questions, and there's lots of space for comments. So for example, if if an urban forestry advocate did this, completed this codes and ordinances worksheet, then they could say their reviewer, put the comments in there. This could go back to the municipality and they could comment here on each of these different topics. Make sure that you stay organized if you're completing this. You want to enter your source of the codes or ordinance that you're looking at. That way it's easier to go back and find it later. This is a very neat section. It tells you what to look for and why that is important. Instead of typing in the numbers, everything is set up on a drop-down. And as you see, if I give my community full points, the red goes away. So the red is not a tool to say your community's bad. The red is a way that you can easily identify the places where you can improve or you might have the potential to increase your codes, ordinances, or practices capacity. So I'm not going to go through each of these, but as I said, this tool is for free for download and to work through. So each of these tabs does have information that needs to be filled out. Another real benefit of this tool is that it doesn't just assume that all of these topics are equal, all the questions and their scores are equal. It's really broken out into what aspects of urban forestry are essential, which one are desired, and which ones are really extras. Like if you have everything, then you can do these extra things, and that's great. So the essential urban forestry element score is here. That's how many points your community got that the green infrastructure that the grant makers deemed were essential. And the ones that are desired are here. The ones that are extras are here. Also how this tool is broken up, and I apologize, I don't want to make everyone dizzy, but it's broken up into the different topics. So tree care and protection, plans and goals, implementation capacity, monitoring progress, emergency response, integration, etc., etc. And you can also see a combination of these two things. So which of the questions that scored 1 point you received, which is the ones that scored 2 points you received, 3 in the tree care and protection section, etc., for each of these sections. So I hope that makes sense. Again, if you have any questions, I'm always available to go through and help you answer that. Now, what I am going to do is move on to the next section of our resources. I'm going to close this. I'm not going to save it. Okay, so the next section of resources are really online repositories of information that are highly organized that'll help you make the case for urban forestry. That's the point. The first one I'm going to show you is the Vibrant Cities Lab. And I'm just going to close some of these things to help the computer run faster and hopefully make sure that you guys have the highest video quality. Okay, Vibrant Cities Lab. There's two parts to this website. The first is the one I was just mentioning, the Research Case Studies Guides, help making the case. The second part is an urban forestry toolkit. So the toolkit is basically a step-by-step of how to set up an urban forestry program that's working, that's really doing what it needs to do. I'm going to click here on Research Case Studies and Guides. It's broken up into these different topics. So human health, economic development, water quality, air quality, etc., etc. Let's say that I have my community is really working hard on transportation. How can trees help my transportation efforts? So you can see here, reduce environmental impact while calming traffic, encouraging walking, etc., etc., etc. And it provides case studies of communities that have done this, that have really used urban forestry to increase transportation quality. And then it provides you with the research studies, these two, for example. Here's another case study, another case study. Then there's this Destination Complete Streets Policy, so you can look at that. If you're working on a Complete Streets Policy, you can, see if you can model some of yours after one that has really stood the test of time and that has been proven to work. You can scroll down and you can see more facts and figures, more research papers, which is all great. And let's say that I'm looking for something, I'm not sure exactly where it would be in this. So for example, I'm looking at redlining. I'm not sure where that would be in equity probably, but we'll go ahead and show you the search feature. So I typed in redlining and I see there's two articles here. The first step to bridging the urban tree canopy gap, counting and mapping trees, and the second, which is a case study. So again, if my city or community is struggling with the effects of redlining, I could go in here and maybe I can find some information that can help me. Okay, when I go back to the main part of this site, I can then click on Urban Forestry Toolkit. This toolkit is very, very, very comprehensive. So you can basically, if your community hasn't started very much with an urban forestry program, start from step one. Begin with the canopy, street tree inventory, etc., 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 and keep going through all of these steps and resources until you have a thriving urban forestry program that is sustainable. For example, you know that your community's also already been working on this. You already have an urban tree canopy, you already have a street tree inventory, and now you're looking at, well, where am I supposed to plant trees now that I know where they are? You can click on Prioritize, and it really gives you information on how you can figure out where to plant your trees, and some organizations that have done very well and that might have some experience that can help you avoid some pitfalls or really experience urban forestry success. So this is really critical to take a look through these, and there's also these guides that are spread through here. Shows you how to connect with other people so that really you can make your goals a reality. So great resource. I really think it would benefit everyone from taking a look at this. And now I'm going to move on to the next resource, which is the Landscape Performance Series Fastback Library. So the Landscape Performance Series is a site that's maintained by the Landscape Architecture Foundation. And we know that landscape architecture and urban forestry definitely intersect. So what I'm going to do is show you how to use the two sets of tools that are on here. The Fastback Library is similar to the Vibrant Cities Lab case studies, and I'm just trying to close this, and that it provides you with organization in an organized way. Sorry, it provides you with information in an organized way. But this has a really neat search feature, which I think is in some ways better than the Vibrant Cities Lab. What you can do is you can search for features. So features such as play equipment, wetlands, trees, trails, traffic calming, etc., etc. So I'm going to click trees for my feature. And it pulls up lots of information about trees and what they can do in the landscapes and how they can help people, how they can help the environment, etc., etc. But the really cool thing is that you can also kind of marry two different topics and find research articles that where those two topics intersect. So what I'm going to look at is trees and, let's say, health and well-being. So I find this, a study of 9,186 U.S. nursing homes found that increased tree canopy coverage is associated with fewer depressive symptoms. If my community has a lot of nursing homes, this might really be a critical fact for me to know. So you can scroll through and you can see these different studies. As you can see, it pulls out some kind of snippets, some highlights of the study. But as you have this reference, you can also find the entire study and read it if you think that there might be much more in there that would be critical to you in making the case for urban forestry. So that's that tool. Again, I think it's wonderful that you can marry the two different topics or even three different topics and you can find studies that intersect. So you can look at your community's goals and what can help you achieve those goals. The next part that I'm going to look at are the benefits toolkit. And this is on the same site, but it's a very different way of looking for information. The benefits toolkit are literally lists of tools that can help achieve a specific problem or question. So for example, the first one that we see here is the Pathfinder Landscape Carbon Calculator. So it's used to estimate the carbon footprint and time to carbon neutral for landscape projects based on site design and management. If I have a question about landscape carbon, that is really critical for me, and I can go ahead and navigate to that. I see it's a new tool, 2019. This looks good to me. The search method that I mentioned just now with the Fastback Library, what's great about this is that it's the same. So I can click, again, feature, and I can click landscape benefit, and I can find tools that help me address both of those things. So as opposed to Googling which tools are out there, you can go onto this site and you can really find quick and accurate direction to tools that can help you achieve the questions that you have in your community. I hope that makes sense. Again, landscape benefit, feature, you can click more than one of those in each category. Obviously, the more that you click, the less tools you're going to have. So you might want to start broad first and then narrow down. Again, if you have any questions about this, please do put them in the question and answers box. The next one I'm going to go to is Urban Forestry South. Okay, Urban Forestry South is a part of the U.S. Forest Service kind of coalition. It's a partnership that is dedicated to communicating the science associated with urban forestry to improve the long-term sustainability of urban ecosystems. So here they publish lots of guides to development, for example, to stormwater reduction that were produced in the South, which is really great because you know that it's a community nearby to you and you can do it too. So if I just scroll through here, I see Stormwater Trees for Credits, Incorporating Forestry into Stormwater Management, Partnership of Children Champions, Nature to Children's Hospital, and an Urban Tree Canopy Assessment, Community's Path to Understanding. These tools all might be critical to me. This is also searchable. Let's say I have a question about urban forestry and public health. I can go ahead and pop that in. And let's say that at the moment, I don't really want to read this article. I don't want to read that, but I want to look at this 40-year research review webinar. So this is a 40-minute webcast. It is for free. I can go ahead and click on that, and I can learn about how urban greening creates public health ecosystem services. So again, searchable. It's dedicated just to communicating urban forestry information to the public. So it's written on a level that the public can all understand, as opposed to some of the research studies we were looking at in the other toolkits that might be a little bit more dense. There's a lot more to explore on this site, but I'm just going to leave it at that for right now, and we're going to go on to the next set of tools. The next two tools that we have are the AARP's Livability Index. You might question, why on earth did I include this Livability Index? The answer is that, as we know, trees can help us accomplish a lot of goals in our communities. So if I enter Monk's Corner, this is just an example. No, I'm not, don't read anything into it. What I can see is that it breaks out a livability score for each of these categories. So for example, I see 54 for housing, 45 for neighborhood access to work, life, and play. And this can really help me understand what a community is doing really well in, and where a community might want to put some more emphasis or some more staff time into, or some more codes and ordinances policies to bolstering that part of the community. And as we know, trees can help us accomplish a lot of these goals. So access to life, work, and play. If I'm looking at access to parks and it's relatively low, then I might want to be looking at walking trails, or I might want to be looking at parcels that a city already owns that they can turn into more parks. And how can we make those accesses tree lined so that it's more comfortable for walking and biking, etc., etc. That's really how I would recommend using this tool. It's also just interesting to look at the place where you live and look at it from a data standpoint and not the eyes that you always see it in. So that can be very fun. Again, if you want to see more of these categories and, how the score is broken up, you can go ahead and click this plus, and it gives you some information about that category and, why the community scored that way. And the last tool that I want to go through is this Eastern Highlands Health Community Toolkit. To full disclosure, that the tool was developed in Eastern Connecticut, as you probably guessed from looking at this. And we decided to leave this tool in for one reason, and that is that when this community undertook this Healthy Communities Toolkit process, they were a little bit frustrated by the lack of resources for rural or smaller communities, and they created this guide in a way that it can be used not just in Connecticut, not just in New England, but throughout the entire country for, again, small rural communities. And you can definitely read through this, but I'm going to scroll down to where I think a huge benefit of the website is, and it's this. It's the Local Land Use Quick Guide. And what it does is, if you click here, there's a community health quick audit. And the audit asks you questions about your community, about walkability, connectivity, let me keep scrolling here, bikeability, playability, placemaking, etc. And we included this here because, again, trees can help you accomplish a lot of these goals. So if you're identifying which parts of these your community is doing really well in and which ones your community can do better in, you can then ask the question, okay, well, if I'm not doing well in this, how can I achieve my goals? And trees, as we know, should be part of that answer. So this is how the tool works. You go ahead and you can fill this out, download it, fill it out. There's also a second part of the tool, which is asking about your town's access to healthy foods. If that's not something that you're particularly interested in looking at the moment, that's fine. You don't have to fill it out. And this can be a standalone, the first half. And what is also great about this is that once you've filled out the quick audit, then what you can do is click here, and it's broken out into the same sections that were in the audit. And you'll see in the audit first was walkability. Here first is, again, walkability. So it gives you some tools. For example, a service of Redfin allows you to learn about your town's walkability score here. So if you feel like your town's not very walkable, you click here on Redfin, you see your town's walkability score. If you wanted to create an initiative to increase walkability, you could say, here, look, Redfin says that our town is not walkable. So it can help you provide the case for taking on these new initiatives. It can also provide you with these planning processes that have been undertaken in other parts of the country. So for example, Austin, Texas, Old Saybrook, Connecticut. You can look at the plans that they created and how your community might also create a plan similar. So you're not starting from scratch. And here we are, model zoning for sidewalks, sidewalk design guidelines. Again, I want to say that these should not just be downloaded and used, but there's something to look at that you can compare and you can use perhaps as a broad model, but they would need to be fine-tuned for your community. So we saw walkability, we saw bikeability. We can scroll down here to connectivity, and you see all of the same kind of sections, all the resources. Here's a wayfinding guide for Virginia. They did try very hard to include areas of the entire country as examples, as opposed to just the New England region. So that is that tool, and that's really it for the resources. I know we went through that really quickly, so I want to give you all a chance to ask some questions. While you're thinking of questions, I'm going to go ahead and pop up some poll questions in the bottom right-hand corner, if you remember where we showed that at the beginning of the webinar. If you don't mind just taking a minute to answer those poll questions, and I will be on live in 1 second to do the question and answer. Thanks so much, everyone. Hi, can everyone hear me, see me? Great. Okay. Well, as I promised, we are still here. I'm going to go ahead and pop up these poll questions. I also wanted to let everyone know that we did not anticipate doing this session pre-recorded, but we just wanted to keep everyone on session, and we've had some schedule changes that we had to kind of work around. So again, I just popped these poll questions up, and let me take a look. I don't see any questions in the Ask a Question section, but if you have any, please go ahead and type them either in the chat or in the Ask a Question, or I can actually bring you live on video if you'd like. So, like I said, polls are up, and we hope that this session was helpful for everyone. We know we really did search around to see, were there a list of tools for commission and board members, and we couldn't find anything. So that's why we undertook this whole, resource sheet and this video and all of this. So again, thank you everyone for being online, and I know that we had some buffering issues for some folks. We're all learning through this, so the recording is going to be available, I guess about 30 minutes after we come off of here live. So if you missed something, please don't worry. It's already recorded, as you know, and you will have access to it. If you are done, don't worry, you can go ahead and log off. Thank you everyone for participating. We really appreciated it, and we would love any feedback. Good. I just see the comment, very helpful, as it can be shared with the staff and other commissioners, as well as the public, and you're welcome. All of the resources and all of these recordings are available on the SCFC Urban and Community Forestry website. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Take care. And as we said, please let us know any feedback you have for what we can do to provide more resources and to provide more help with maybe the resources that we've already presented. Great. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. You're welcome, Ginger. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Great. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end it. If you commented about CEU credits, I did see all of those. So not to worry. I'll take care of them either tomorrow or early next week. Thanks, everyone.